I grew up believing our kitchen smelled like safety. Every Sunday morning, Mom would fry cinnamon sugar donuts, tucking loose strands of hair behind her ear while steam jeweled her glasses. Dad would hum Lionel Richie, the Chicago Tribune spread across the table like a picnic blanket, and I, Noah Miller, straight-A scholarship hopeful, was the golden child who made their picture frame life shine. At least that's what everyone saw. Mom worked as an executive assistant at Trimark Logistics, a mid-sized freight company perched on the edge of downtown. She carried herself with the polished certitude of someone who'd memorized the corporate rulebook. Dress one pay grade above where you are, and act 2 grades higher. Most nights she came home late, smelling of copier toner and ambition, and sat with me at the kitchen island quizzing vocabulary while Dad drifted off in his recliner. She liked to joke that she was molding me. Trimark could use someone who actually finished college. She'd say, half laughing, half pleading, I thought she meant after my degree, never instead of it. We weren't close, but we weren't enemies. Not yet. Our relationship ran on achievement. I performed. She applauded. I headed the debate team. She laminated my certificates. I landed national-level math trophies. She framed them so the gold foil matched our living room sconces. Dad cheered from the sidelines, but Mom was the quiet conductor. Every accolade another note in her private symphony. Senior year, college brochures piled like snowdrifts on my desk. Stanford, Northwestern, NYU. Yet despite the swirl of prospects, I sensed a hairline crack in our perfect tableau. When I mentioned out-of-state tuition, Mom's smile flickered. You'd be so far away, she murmured, twisting her wedding band until the skin beneath blushed red. I dismissed it as maternal nerves, the inevitable pang of an emptying nest. But there were subtler currents. The way she intercepted the mail first, claiming it was safer in her hands. How she insisted on helping with every application's return envelope. Her sudden fascination with my password hints. Still, life felt normal until it didn't. One icy February afternoon, I found her in the garage hunched over the recycling bin, shredding what looked like fat college packets. She startled when I coughed, then laughed it off. Just clearing junk mail, honey? I shrugged, but a chill crawled up my spine that had nothing to do with winter air. Looking back, that was the moment the cinnamon sugar haze lifted. Something wasn't right under our roof. Something envy-shaped, ambition-scented, hidden beneath Mom's perfect posture. And I, oblivious, was already tiptoeing toward the edge of a fault line I couldn't yet see. I still remember the sting of that envelope, thin, limp, the color of defeat. It waited on my pillow like a plucked white feather the morning college decisions went live. My heart rattled against my ribs as I cracked the seal from Stanford. My long-shot dream where debate legends cut their teeth. One sentence, black as spilled ink, ended it. We regret to inform you. I folded myself into the bathroom tiles and cried until my face felt raw. When I stumbled into the kitchen, Mom was already pouring coffee, eyes shining with something I mistook for sympathy. I'm proud of you anyway, she said, sliding a plate of toast toward me as if carbs could soak up heartbreak. Dad tried a joke, something about state schools being cheaper, but drifted off when Mom shot him a look sharp enough to slice butter. By evening, she'd coaxed me into applying for a temp position in Trimark's mailroom, just for the summer. I agreed, numb and ashamed, clutching Dad's hug like a life vest while Mom mapped my future on a napkin. Weeks passed in fluorescent blur. The mailroom smelled of dust and desperation. Pallets of parcels towered like silent judges as I sorted invoices destined for floors I couldn't access. Yet each morning, Mom greeted me in the lobby with a peck on the cheek and whispered, "Keep your chin up. Executives notice hustle." Her heels clicked away, and I wondered whose future I was hustling for. Then came the accident, if you can call a truth detonating an accident. Corporate sent a security alert about phishing scams. We were told to shred any suspicious mail. I'd become a human shredder, so when I found an unopened FedEx envelope addressed to me, postmarked 3 months earlier, I almost fed it to the blades. Something, a flicker of dread, stopped my hand. Inside was Stanford's original packet, thick and glorious, welcoming me to the class with a full-ride scholarship. I read it twice, thrice, my pulse hissing in my ears. Someone had penciled tiny XS over the delivery barcode, as if to mark it undeliverable. I stormed upstairs, letter clutched like a burning brand, and barged into Mom's cubicle. Explain. My voice cracked, too loud for the carpeted hush. She froze, fingers hovering above her keyboard. For a split second, panic flashed across her face. Then a practiced sadness settled in. Noah, sweetheart, you were so stressed. I didn't want you setting yourself up for disappointment. You decided that for me? I hissed. Heads popped over partitions. Mom's cheeks went crimson. She pulled me into a conference room and shut the door. Listen to me. Stanford is 2,000 miles away. We couldn't afford the travel. Your father's health insurance. Scholarship covers tuition. I shouted. Why would you rather see me in a mailroom than a dorm? Her lips trembled, but not with guilt, with resentment. Because I have given 20 years to Trimark without rising a single tear, and our VP notices legacy, Noah. When she heard my college-bound son needed summer work, she offered mentorship. My mentorship, if I proved reliable. You were leverage. My promotion is finally on the table because of you. It was like watching my own mother peel off a mask. In that moment, I saw the ambition that hummed beneath every laminated certificate, every tight smile. She hadn't shredded my dream by accident. She'd archived it, for collateral. The room spun. They didn't ask. They didn't listen. They just condemned me. The training videos had said about corporate negligence. Now those words boomed in my skull, repurposed for blood ties. That's the day I lost everything. Not just Stanford, but trust, innocence, the notion that family automatically roots for your ascent. I walked out before the first sob wrenched free, past gawking coworkers, past Dad's confused text pings, past the front doors where cinnamon sugar sundaes now felt like propaganda. Outside, summer heat slapped my cheeks dry. My reflection glared back at me in the lobby glass. Same suit, new vacancy behind the eyes. I realized the real rejection letter wasn't from a university. It was from my own mother, postmarked the day she chose her ladder over my wings. I quit the mailroom that same afternoon, tossed my badge onto the receptionist's desk like a chipped domino, and walked out into rush hour heat that smelled of gasoline and stale coffee. Mom didn't chase me. She didn't have to. By the time I reached the L platform, she'd already texted Dad a neat summary. Noah's having another meltdown. Dad called that night, his voice caught between concern and fatigue. Son, your mother says you misunderstood. Misunderstood what, Dad? A missing scholarship packet. Silence pooled at the other end. When he finally exhaled, it sounded like defeat. We'll talk tomorrow. Tomorrow never rang. College evaporated in slow, humiliating increments. Without Stanford's offer on record, the FAFSA clocked me as an ordinary applicant, the kind who still owed tens of thousands. My safety school rescinded its aid when I missed enrollment deadlines. Another set of forms that had mysteriously never reached my inbox. I tried community college, but pride clawed at me every time I glimpsed Trimark's tower from the bus window. By Thanksgiving, tuition arrears glued me to the registrar's blacklist. Friends dispersed to dorms with neon posters and midnight ramen. Their Instagram feeds glittered with lecture halls and football games. My feed was a wasteland of unread messages. I left 3 voicemails begging my best friend Danny to call me back. He never did. No one returned my calls. It was like I'd died. Money bled away next. I picked up shifts at a 24-hour diner, then a warehouse, then graveyard security at a shuttered mall. Exhaustion filled my bones like wet cement. One December rent check bounced. The second earned me an eviction notice. I stuffed clothes into a trash bag, lied to my landlord about a family emergency, and spent the first night of winter in the back seat of Dad's old Civic, engine off, breath frosting the windshield. I lived in my car. I stopped caring what happened to me. Hunger sharpened everything. I scrolled job listings at library computers until the screen blurred. Each rejection email felt like another invisible stamp on my forehead. Unhireable. Weeks slid into months. I grew a beard, partly to ward off cold, partly so mirrors would stop poisoning me with the face of the boy who once dreamt in cardinal and white Stanford sweaters. I told myself I was coping, but some nights the Civic felt smaller than a coffin. On one of those nights, February rain drummed the roof like a funeral march. I drove to Jackson Bridge, headlights carving ghostly tunnels through mist. I stepped out, shoes slipping on slick concrete, and leaned over the railing. The river below churned black, indifferent. I pictured my body hitting that water. Quick splash, brief obituary, maybe a line about mental health awareness. Wind howled through steel trusses, cold fingers on my spine. I stood on that bridge and thought, maybe it's better if I disappear. A semi roared past, rocking the bridge just enough to jolt adrenaline through my veins. Panic, bizarrely, kept me alive. I staggered back to the car, soaked through, heart hammering against my ribs like it still believed there was a future worth beating for. But I had no map, no money, no home. Only a numb certainty that the boy who once smelled cinnamon sundaes was gone. All that remained was a hollow shell gripping a steering wheel, chasing sleep in parking lots where security guards eventually tapped the glass and told me to move along. And so I drifted, unaware that somewhere on the other side of town an unlikely lifeline was already being strung across my private abyss. For nights after the bridge, the Civic coughed its last breath in the parking lot of a 24-hour laundromat. I sat behind the wheel shivering, feverish from a chest cold and a diet of gas station pretzels. At 3 a.m., the fluorescent bulbs inside the laundromat flickered like a pulse I could no longer feel in my own body. I cracked the door, intending to beg the cashier for hot water, and promptly collapsed onto the oily asphalt. That's where Frank found me, though at the time he was just a pair of steel-toed boots and a baritone mutter. "Easy, kid. Let's get you warm." He lifted me, dead weight, rain-soaked, reeking of engine coolant, and settled me into the cab of his box truck. The heater blasted desert air. Country music hummed low. He didn't ask for explanations. He didn't pepper me with pity. He didn't save me with words. He saved me with presence. Frank Delgado ran Second Wind, a non-profit furniture recycling warehouse on the edge of the riverfront. Ex-Army mechanic, 50-something, shoulders like loading docks. By day, he refurbished donated couches for families starting over. By night, he drove routes collecting broken things other people had given up on. It seemed fitting he'd scooped me off pavement like another dented dresser. At the shelter attached to the warehouse, a volunteer pressed a mug of broth into my hands while Frank filled out intake forms. I was half delirious, but I caught him scribble "no next of kin available" and felt a strange, shameful relief. The formality made my exile official. Over the next week, a clinic nurse pumped antibiotics into my arm. Frank pumped something harder to quantify, steadiness, into my bones. He handed me a cot, then a broom, then a clipboard. "Work heals," he said, not unkindly. I swept sawdust, logged inventory, learned the difference between alder and oak. For the first time, someone believed me. One evening, after lights out, I told Frank about the scholarship and the shredded envelope. He didn't shrug it off or say, "Moms can be overprotective." He simply whistled long and low. "Sounds like you got robbed, son. Question is, you gonna stay mugged or stand back up?" Standing up took form in small rituals. 5 a.m. push-ups on the loading dock, community college night classes Frank insisted on paying for. Consider it ROI. I expect you to run this joint's books someday. He taught me how to rebuild a transmission, but more importantly, how to rebuild a sense of worth. Torque the bolts, check the pressure, don't over-tighten or you'll strip the thread. Healing, he implied, followed the same rules. Spring thawed the river ice and, with it, the ice in my chest. I traded the Civic for a battered bike, the shelter cot for a corner in Frank's spare room. We ate chili from the same chipped bowl and argued about baseball stats. I still woke some nights gagging on the memory of the bridge rail under my palms. But the panic didn't own me anymore. I wasn't healed. But I wasn't broken anymore either. One rainy afternoon, a delivery mix-up sent me to Trimark's loading bay. As I rolled a refurbished desk off the truck, Mom strode past in her tailored blazer, umbrella snapping like a flag. She didn't see me, but I saw the plaque newly mounted in the lobby. Operations Coordinator, Margaret Miller. Her long-sought promotion. My stomach nodded, not with envy but with eerie calm. I realized my story and hers were still braided together, whether I liked it or not. That night, Frank found me staring at that plaques photo on my phone. He didn't comment. He just asked, "Ready to stop running?" And an audacious thought sparked. If Mom had climbed a ladder built from my stolen rungs, maybe I could build a better one, starting right beneath her feet. The idea felt radioactive, thrilling, terrifying. But for the first time since Stanford's envelope, the future wasn't a blank. Frank once told me that every broken dresser has two stories. The one where it splinters, and the one where it stands again. Year 2 at Second Wind became my second story. Night classes turned into an associate's degree in supply chain management. Days on the loading dock morphed into spreadsheets I coded to track salvage turnaround. Frank laughed when I color-coded graphs. Kids making furniture sexy. But he sent those reports to donors, and donations tripled. With new funding, Frank promoted me to warehouse supervisor. I hired folks who'd slept in the shelter with me. Leroy, a former trucker rebuilding sobriety. Nia, a single mom whose laugh could bounce off rafters. Work didn't just heal us. It stitched us together into something like family. On Sundays we grilled hot dogs in the parking lot, gospel spilling from Nia's Bluetooth speaker while kids chalked doodles on the loading ramp. The cinnamon sugar scent of childhood Sundays no longer haunted me. I traded it for grill smoke and possibility. Then, a citywide initiative to contract small nonprofits for municipal office renovations landed on Frank's desk. The bid package was thick, compliance clauses, logistics forecasts, OSHA affidavits. Frank tapped the folder, slid it over. "If we land this, kid, you'll run point. Think you can tango with City Hall?" I smirked. Been taking lessons since Stanford ghosted me. To compete, we needed a corporate liaison inside Trimark. Their trucks dominated regional freight, and subcontracting them would shave costs. Frank handed me a business card he'd picked up at a charity gala. Trimark Logistics, Operations Coordinator, Margaret Miller. My throat dried. Fate apparently enjoyed symmetry. 3 months later, the city awarded the contract, conditional on our freight partnership. I scheduled a proposal meeting at Trimark's boardroom. Frank wanted to join, but I asked to go alone. "Some debris I need to clear," I said. He clasped my shoulder, worry and faith wrestling in his eyes. "Bring goggles." Walking into Trimark again felt surreal. Same polished floors, same hiss of elevator hydraulics, except this time I wore a tailored charcoal suit, not a mailroom badge. The receptionist offered lemon water. I waited under the new mission statement stenciled on glass. Delivering futures. The irony nearly made me laugh. Mom entered, heels echoing like metronomes. She didn't see my face until she was 2 steps away. Then recognition burst across her features, followed by panic that rippled her immaculate composure. "Noah?" she whispered, clutching her planner as though it might shield her. "Mr. Miller, actually procurement lead for Second Wind Rehabilitation Services." I extended the glossy proposal. "We're here to discuss a contract that could net Trimark 7 figures over 3 years. May we proceed?" The meeting unfurled like a play performed before an audience of executives. I outlined freight schedules, carbon offset incentives, community impact metrics. Questions flew. I volleyed answers. Mom sat frozen, lips pressed white. When the CFO asked about Second Wind's growth projections, I clicked to a slide featuring testimonials from families who'd furnished their first apartments after homelessness. My voice trembled only once, on the sentence, "We rebuild what others discard, because every human life deserves more than one story." Afterward, the board filed out, murmuring approval. Mom remained. The door thudded shut behind the last suit. Silence pooled. She spoke first, voice brittle. "You've built all this without us?" I let the question hang, then answered, "I had to." I slid Stanford's faded welcome letter across the table, edges frayed from years in my wallet. "You took this from me. I took your promotion's leverage and turned it into something better." Tears glazed her eyes. "I was scared," she rasped. "Scared you'd leave. Scared to stagnate." She reached across the mahogany expanse. "I'm sorry, Noah. Truly. Apology sounded like someone trying to extinguish a wildfire with a teacup. Anger flared, then ebbed. I'd rehearsed rage, but exhaustion felt truer. I don't need an apology to sign this contract, I said, tapping the paperwork the board would soon approve. What I need is honesty, and maybe space. She nodded, tears spilling, mascara streaking the facade she'd lived behind. I gathered my files. At the doorway I paused, not turning. I had everything I once dreamed of without you, I said softly. This partnership helps the city, the nonprofit, and yes, Trimark. But understand, it's mercy, not reconciliation. In the lobby, sunlight poured through high windows, warming the marble. I inhaled. For the first time, Trimark smelled not of betrayal but of closure. And somewhere beyond those doors, grills sizzled, kids chalked sidewalks, and Frank waited to hear whether his kid had danced with City Hall and won. The contract with Trimark bloomed into headlines. City rehabs offices with upcycled furniture, cuts carbon by 40%. Reporters snapped photos of Frank and me shaking hands with council members. Mom hovered on the edge of every frame, smile polite, eyes haunted. The partnership funneled steady freight revenue into second wind and funneled something quieter into me. A sense that the ground beneath my feet, once so fragile, had grown roots. Mom called twice that summer, each time leaving voicemails that sounded like someone practicing honesty in the mirror. I'm in therapy. I'm learning why I did what I did. I understand if you never call back. I didn't erase them, but I didn't return them either. Forgiveness, I'd realized, isn't a switch, it's a landscape you choose to enter when you're ready. And I was still building the road. Life filled with ordinary miracles. Nia earned her GED and started night classes in interior design. Leroy celebrated 3 years sober beneath the strung lights of our loading dock, cake balanced on a pallet jack. Frank teased that I was running the joint, then made it official. Second Wind handed me the operations director's title he'd once envisioned. On the day I signed the offer, he pressed a slim envelope into my hand. Stanford's crest embossed on fresh stationery. Deferred admission, he grinned. Their adult learning MBA wants folks who can prove real-world supply chain innovation. I sent your numbers. The irony folded over itself like warm dough. This time, no one would intercept the mail. Yet closure isn't victory laps. It's quiet choices. Late September, Mom requested a meeting at a neutral place. Millennium Park, Sunday morning, tourists grazing around Cloud Gate. Frank urged caution. My gut agreed, but my heart, scarred yet curious, said go. She stood beneath the mirrored arch, hair wind-tossed, holding a folder. No blazer, no corporate armor, just a mother recognizable beneath ambition's shell. These are the emails, she said, handing me printed chains. Proof I altered your admissions password. Intercepted calls. My therapist says transparency is step 1. I skimmed lines of my past sabotage, the ink blurring as anger surged then ebbed like a wave breaking on deeper water. I exhaled. Thank you for showing me. The phrase surprised us both. Gratitude can coexist with hurt, I discovered, like two hands on the same rail. She swallowed. Can we ever? I shook my head gently. We can start from where we are, not from where we were. It wasn't forgiveness stamped and notarized. It was a trailhead. We walked the park's perimeter once, conversation tentative, then parted. I watched her silhouette shrink against downtown's glinting towers, her ladder still climbing, my wings finally spread. That night, I stood alone on Jackson Bridge, the river black but no longer menacing. I wasn't here to vanish. I was here to measure how far I'd come. Wind tugged at my coat, but it felt like an invitation, not a shove. I spoke aloud, voice steady. They made their choice. Now they live with it. And I live with mine. I left the bridge smiling at the thought that tomorrow's furniture delivery would refurbish another office, another life. Healing, I realized, is less like a phoenix's blaze and more like sanded wood. Slow strokes, grain revealed, varnish catching light. I built a life they can't take away from me again. And each day I choose to keep building is another letter addressed to myself. one no one else can hide.
If you made it this far, you're officially part of the drama. Subscribe for more, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done?